CI and CD on AWS. And I'll probably show you a small demo. This is going to be probably a level 200 session, so 100, 200, very introductory, nothing too heavy. And I hope, please do ask me questions as we go. I do have a Kahoot quiz at the end, and I may ask questions and I may shout chocolates if you answer the question correctly. So I have over 20 years experience as a Java developer predominantly, and I've spent the last probably 7 years as a solution architect working with AWS hands-on. Yeah, so I'm very nervous. This is my very first public talk, so bear with me, and I will tend to speak fast. And if I am speaking too fast, please just raise your hand and ask me questions. I really appreciate that. And I have a survey at the end for feedback for me and a job to share, and you can give me feedback on it. I appreciate that very much. So today, quickly, what we will do is we'll cover what the foundations of CI and CD are, look at what Amazon's offering on the AWS cloud are from a CI/CD tooling perspective, a demo where I'll go into and show you how we use the tools called CodePipeline, Code Build and Code Deploy. And there's a Kahoot quiz, a short 7-question quiz, just for fun. And we'll have some time for Q&A hopefully. And if anyone is hungry still, there is pizza and drinks outside at any time. Please just go and grab some. So foundations of CI/CD. So CI and CD, it's called like the full form continuous integration or continuous delivery, continuous deployment. CD is controversial sometimes. People think when they're doing CD, they think they're doing continuous deployment all the time. But back in the day when I started out 20 years ago, this is very much what I used to work in, where as a developer, all teams would be working on one code base, and there would be this monthly cadence at which there would be a cutoff. So we would check in our code, we would make our changes, check it into the repository, and there would be the dev environment where we would be able to validate those changes on a daily basis or as we were going. But for it to get released to production, there was like the whole process. It was called a release management function. So it was a complete separate team which did release management. So what used to happen there is, you can see that the pipeline remains the same. It's got the delivery pipeline that says build, test, release, and monitor. So what the developers did was just the build bit, right? And then once the developers were done, there was suddenly a cutoff at, say, probably 3 weeks into the 1 month. And then the release management function would kick in, and they would cut the release or build out all of the artifacts of all the services and deploy them into the test or the staging environment, where the testers would then go in and test. And if the testers found any issues, that would come back to the developers. If they gave a green signal, the artifacts were then kicked off to the operations team, where the operations team then did the release, and the operations team then took care of monitoring the application. So there was this huge disconnect between the developers in the build phase and the actual release with the operations team taking care of that. And very often this took like almost, depending on the company, it could be anywhere from a quarterly release cycle to a monthly release, half-yearly to a yearly release cycle. And so this soon became a bottleneck, right? So if you're having, as your number of teams grow, as you're adding multiple features to your products, you're having, obviously having multiple development teams. Very soon you're going to have one development team who's not very good with writing good tests, or probably not writing good software, who's holding up everyone else because their tests aren't passing it, therefore their tester isn't giving the green signal, and it's holding you back from being able to release your code to your customer, because your customer is really wanting this feature, and your product owner is like, hey, I want this out, but it's blocked. So very, very soon, that there are these issues. I'm not saying this is wrong. There are companies who still have this sort of delivery pipeline today. And as this was happening at the same time, where you start feeling this pain of of massive development, product development, there was technology advancements as in the form of REST APIs. There was architectural enhancements in the form of, REST, where microservices, where using these REST APIs and leveraging that those REST APIs to decouple your monolith, where you go into having multiple delivery pipelines. So therefore, each team has its own delivery pipeline, no longer depending on someone else to get your feature out. And if you look at the steps, all remain the same, right? It's still build, test, release, and monitor. There's one slight difference. In the monolithic model, there was the operations team who knew exactly what the release contained, and they could work with the technical writing team to write down your release notes as well. So you had an actual release process, which used to then be updated on your product website, saying that this update that has gone out has this updates, or these bug fixes in that particular update. Once you go into this, you get into that challenge. So continuous delivery, continuous development is not equal to continuous release, because you're not releasing. You are probably making incremental changes, you're getting them directly into production, but they are not ready for use by customers. Usually you do deployments as canary deployments, or you generally turn them off, or you turn them on for a certain subset of users to validate that it's working before you, so kind of called blue-green deployments, or you just canary deployments where you turn them on for just a subset of customers. And with this, what this also did, when you look at having multiple delivery pipelines, this obviously causes the problem where you can't now you no longer can kick it over the fence to the operations team and ask the operations team to look after your products and your services, because it's just too much. They have no idea of what has been built, what each service is doing, what does good look like. So you can't, this ended up bringing in, or rather closing the gap between the developers and the operations team, right? So what you wanted is, so close the gap between that. And what it meant was that developers started taking on a little bit more of the operational side when it came to like monitoring their pipelines. And that's where the mindset of DevOps came in as well. So CI/CD principles and the DevOps mindset, they go together. CI/CD are the tools that help you to achieve rapid delivery. So where DevOps is the mindset which enables you to leverage CI/CD tools to be able to get value to your customers. I've kind of already touched base on all of this already, but as a summary, by adopting CI/CD, as in by adopting a DevOps mindset and using CI/CD tools for rapid delivery, you can deliver faster to production. You can, and the idea is that you start releasing small and fast, right? So you're releasing smaller changes, and therefore, because it's small changes, you can go fast. And the idea is that because they are small changes, the impact that they can have, or the amount that they can, the damage that they can cause, would also be potentially small. But don't quote me on that. And I forgot to say that all opinions are mine, not AWS. Okay, I forgot to say that. All opinions are mine. Yeah, and then obviously this is the third point, going into the fact that developers have to take on a bit of operations as well, where you now have to ensure that you really understand how your application or your service is performing by creating dashboards to see insights into your application. And the last one, of course, if your website is down, customers can't use it, your revenue is going to drop. So you want to protect your business and you want to protect your customers. So you want to adopt CI/CD because you want to improve your maturity with your delivery and be more confident in what you are delivering to your customers. So we've kind of seen the similar life cycle already. What this looks like is you have the source where the developer is building the changes or building the code that will for the new feature and checking that into the repository. But before the check-in, you have the process of, you want to ensure that you've written unit tests and automated component tests. You want to ensure that you've done a test review with your tester or your quality analyst. And then you want to also ensure that you have done a peer review with your, peer on your team or maybe in another team. So you want to do that, and then you check it into the repository. And as soon as you check it into the repository, the build server that you use would then build the artifacts, run those tests, and create the artifacts that you need. So this is something that's, in my case, at least from the time that I've been in the industry, continuous integration has been prevalent, where I would check into the repository and then a Jenkins server would sitting somewhere which was managed by somebody who would come running to you saying, hey, what are you doing? Because, you know, as to Susanna's point, it has limited compute. And so continuous integration, I think, is something that's been around for a long time, where as soon as you commit your code, the artifacts are built in available for you. And the next evolution to this is where you go to continuous delivery. And continuous delivery, there's a very slight difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment. And the difference is that with continuous delivery, you're still doing the same steps as you've got your artifacts built, you're deploying it probably into a development environment or staging environment, but you want to do a manual verification step. So you either want to validate either someone needs to manually validate by running some system tests or integration tests, or you want, because you are not very confident in your processes, because you feel like your test coverage isn't adequate enough, or you're not running the right level of tests, you want someone to manually approve the changes, someone who's probably more experienced, who can look at the changes that are in there and say, yes, I'm happy and I'm confident that this can go despite the problems that we have. And then you have the continuous deployment, where you no longer have the gates. So you're straight deploying to production. So again, is continuous deployment the same as continuous release? I can see you, so you can. I hope it reaches. Oops, sorry. Yeah, so it's not. Yeah, so anyway, so basically we have these four stages, and that's what is the difference between continuous integration, delivery, and deployment. And from an AWS perspective, AWS provides the tooling which enables you to achieve that CI/CD pipeline on AWS. And again, all opinions are my own, but I really love the AWS offering because from my own experience, I worked with Concourse. Has anyone heard of Concourse?
Me.
We worked together. I know we worked together. Anyway, so Concourse or Circle CI. Anyone heard of Circle CI?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes? I don't know, I'm going with dark chocolate for everybody. I hope you're okay with dark chocolate and orange. And with those tools, the integrations with other built tools is gnarly. You have to write your own integrations. And what I love about the AWS offering is it's plug and play. You can choose parts of it. You don't have to choose the whole thing. You can choose parts of it and it will work with Jenkins, it will work with Bamboo, it will work with GitLab, it will work with GitHub. You don't have to use all of these services. You can use just parts of it, and that's what I love about it. And I'm not selling it, that's my opinion. And I'll talk about one more probably in a bit. But, and bear in mind, I've got, as I said, there's a Kahoot quiz at the end, so go through the slides. If you're not able to see the slides, you may not get another chocolate with Kahoot quiz. So what we have, so as you can see, this is, at the top you have your entire pipeline for release, and at the top is author. So for authoring, where developers can make their changes, and to Susanna's point that, if I have to run IntelliJ and Eclipse on my laptop, very often I would run out of memory. I would keep having to add more RAM. We now have Cloud9, which I will show in the demo as well as we go. We have Cloud9, which supports over 40 programming languages. So it is your IDE in the cloud. You don't have to worry about your compute, having your laptop with enough compute to run that for you. From the source perspective, so your version control, we have CodePipeline, which is your Git repository. Code build is our fully managed build and artifact service. And code deploy is what we use as our managed deployment service. And for monitoring perspective, as I mentioned, that you have to monitor as well, so we make that easy, which is you have X-Ray for your request tracing, and CloudWatch for your metrics and logging. From the at the top, you've got CodePipeline, which enables you to which is a fully managed, which is our fully managed continuous delivery service. And you can use either one of these or all of these to be able to build out your continuous delivery or your CI/CD pipeline in the cloud. Down here, we have CodeGuru. So CodeGuru is our, and I'll show you a small snippet of it as well today, is our intelligent review in the cloud. So it's like giving you insights about your code. It's recommendations by automatically running when you create a pull request. You can even run it offline. You don't have to have a pull request when you run it, but you can run it against a pull request. Every time you create a pull request, you can run this where it can give you recommendations against your code and suggest improvements that you can make to your code. So again, I think I've touched base on this, but code commit is the version control. I'll quickly run through this. The developers can either, again, I put developer workstation here, but it can be Cloud9 in your the Cloud9 environment. You check out the repository, make your changes, deploy them into a developer account, ensure that it works, submit it for a code review, and you want this to be as fast and as seamless as possible. You want to be able to enable them to be able to test those locally, and then you check it in, and once you check it in, it's built, and you run the tests, you build the artifacts, and download dependencies. And this step, right, I went too fast. And this step really needs to be thorough, your tests. You want to be able to, with a very mature CI/CD pipeline, you want to have a very thorough and extensive set of tests, right? So if you know there's the test pyramid, so you can have unit tests which give you feedback real fast. So you want to have maximum coverage using unit tests, and you want to be as thorough as you can with your unit tests. And then you have the component tests, which are slightly more expensive, and that's the next level of testing. It gives you confidence in within your service, the functionality. So you want to be able to ensure that that stage is thorough, because you want to, within your pipeline, to be able to have continuous deployment. You want to get fail fast. You want to be able to get that confidence as early as possible, and it's cheapest when you try to get it with your tests, right? You don't want to wait to deploy and then get your feedback. You want to get that feedback as early as possible in that pipeline. So that's the metrics that we will. I think I have a slide on that. And then once you've checked it in, once it's built, once the artifacts are there, you deploy it to a dev environment, and then from there to another staging environment, and then to production, right? So the reason why you're doing it in multiple environments, it's three-stage approach, is again because you want to gain that confidence. You want to deploy it multiple times, you want to keep monitoring it, you want to test it, and you want to ensure and you want to ensure that you are I'm okay. And you want to ensure that you get that feedback as early as possible, so that you don't deploy and cause an outage in production, or cause your customers some pain. So we use CodeDeploy to do deployments. Basically, you're deploying an application. The application has a revision, which is basically a version, which identifies the source code, the artifacts, and the executables that come with it. It has a deployment group. Basically, you're saying, where do you want to deploy this application? So do you want to deploy it on EC2 instances? Do you want to deploy it on serverless with Lambda? Where do you want to deploy it? And you can identify the where based on tags, or if it's an EC2, you could do it based on autoscaling groups as well. And we'll see today in the demo based on tags. And then it has the deployment configuration of how should this deployment take place. Most of this deployment configuration is defined in the app spec file. The app spec file can be in YAML format or in JSON format. And it basically says how you should deploy this application. And it tells you, once it tells you how to deploy the application, like for example, if you were deploying a WAR file, you want to copy it into that Tomcat folder onto your EC2 instance. So it kind of tells you the app spec file contains those instructions. Will say this is how you install, this is where you install. And it will also have instructions on how to start your application, how to stop your application, and other things. And I'll show you an example of an app spec file and the scripts that go with it, which will make this very clear. But just remember that an app spec file can be both YAML and JSON. And this is CodePipeline. And with CodePipeline, I'm just going to skip to the next slide. It consists of stages, right? And it executes stages in order, sorry. And each of the stages are just nothing but a grouping of one or more actions. And and a pipeline has to have at least minimum 2 stages. It cannot have less than 2 stages. It has to have 2 stages. And from an actions perspective, so basically you can see this pipeline over here where it says source code commit. So basically it is forking the repository and checking out the code. And then it's running build, where it's running code build, where the build, how to run that build is defined in a build spec file. So there's a build spec.yaml, again something that I will show you. And then it's deploying that app, which is code deploy. And only if each of those steps, like it only transitions with the previous stage, all the actions in the previous stage completed successfully. So you can have more than one action in a stage. So things like actions go, what is an action? So you can see 3 actions there. So some actions are source, build, test, deploy, invoke, and approve. So we already saw that build and test both use code deploy. As far as deploy goes, you can deploy using code deploy. You can deploy to a CloudFormation stack. You can deploy to S3, like let's say you were hosting a website in S3 and you have made a change to that website. You can deploy to that website the change that you had made. You can deploy to app config, which is our feature toggling or feature flagging offering. On AWS, you can deploy Elastic Beanstalk. Elastic Beanstalk makes application development much simpler on AWS. So if you had something that was using an EC2 instance, you can very easily spin up a web server or application-based server using Elastic Beanstalk. So you could deploy that as well. You could deploy to Alexa, you could deploy to Service Catalog, OpsWorks, and ECS. The next one is invoke. So you want to, as your pipeline goes through, you may want to invoke something external. So you could invoke a Lambda function or a step function or something external. So you would be able to use the invoke action to invoke external operations. And and the last one is approve. So approve is what is this manual step that I was talking about earlier with the continuous delivery. So where you can create a sort of a gate. Stop the pipeline until someone manually approves it. And that's again another thing which I really like, and again my own opinion, I really like that with AWS that it's very simple to set up a manual gate. Whereas when I was at that we used Concourse, we had to write a convoluted gate logic using GitHub, the Git branches, and it always used to have someone running up over to me and saying, "Ooh, what exactly is going to get released if I approve this?" Very, very complicated. But this approve is very, very simple, and that's what I like about it. I do not like one thing about it, and the fact that you cannot actually tag a specific person and say, "Hey, Richard, can you please approve this for me so that you can get notified and approve?" So, yeah, thanks. But that's one thing that I don't like about the approve. It does not allow you to tag a specific person. It creates a gate, and you can send an SMS notification which can go to a Slack channel, and you can get notified, and then you can go ahead and approve it. But it doesn't allow you to specify either one or many people specifically. So this is just talking about the integrations that exist, and I already have discussed its plug and play, and we go to the demo. So with the demo, I hope are we okay for time?
Yes.
So here I have a pipeline. Is it okay? Can everyone see?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay. So I have a pipeline here, and I've intentionally made it fail. Okay. It's not like the demagogues have not been. It's not like the demagogues are still. They kind of still. But I've built a pipeline here where it has the stages of source, where I'm getting the code from code commit. I have a build stage. I have a verify stage, which is my manual approval stage, and I have a deploy, which is a code deploy, which deploys to EC2 instances. And what I have here, if I just go into the details of, I think I would go into the details of the build first, actually. So if I go into the build, where it takes me to code build, You can see all of the logs with regards to the build. So if I manage to scroll right to the bottom, which I lost the... So you can see that it says it failed because it was trying to run Maven install and that exited. And if I scroll somewhere slightly above, you can see that I have 4 tests running and one had an error in it. So I don't know if you can see that very clearly, but that was an error there. And says that there was an error and so it did not run. And what I also have is these surefire reports which are getting exported, where I can see trends about and gain confidence in my application, right? So over here you can see that I've run this build 18 times, or I've run Maven install for this particular repository about 18 times. On an average, I've got 3 tests that run, and my pass rate is like 96.15%, which is not so great. And I have the report here which tells me that it has failed, and that give me the same logs as the other one, but it would tell me with more specific details as to which test failed. So you can go in, you can look in, and here you can see that I have a test here which is an error and has failed. So what I have done as well is I've created a pull request fixing the test, but before that I will just go one more thing before I show you the pull request. I'll show you the code guru reviewer. Yeah. So here's the reviewer that I was telling you, which gives you intelligent and incremental recommendations on your pull requests. So you can see here is that I had one that I ran earlier on a previous version, and it gave me a recommendation saying, I don't know if you guys can read, and if you guys are just being very nice to me. So I hope that's better. So you can see that it says client constructors are now deprecated in favor of using builders. So basically, it's telling me that there was a line here. Yeah, so it's basically taking me to this line over here, 58, where it was using constructor instead of a builder. And I've just commented out the builder one below for ease, but that's kind of what I had there. And if I go back to the pull request, where I've created a pull request where I've fixed the test, and I have also addressed that recommendation. So you'll be able to see the changes here. So one is I am now using the builder, and I have fixed my test. Earlier I didn't have the try catch block in my test, and I have that now. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to quickly merge this. So what you'll see is that CodePipeline, the pipeline will trigger as soon as it supports these 3 different ways of merging. I'm going to go with fast forward merge. And what we'll see is that this will trigger the pipeline, which is like here, pipelines, and you can see it's already done it. Demo calls are super kind. So it just went, and the build is running right now. And while that's going, right, while this completes and comes to the manual verification phase, I'll just go into, okay, so if this has not been found, it says to use it, please refresh. Okay, I'll refresh this. Maybe that will work. Sorry. Yeah, I think that's better. So this is the build spec file. I'm going to try to, and all of this code is available in the slide deck. The slide deck will be sent out to you. You'll be able to access all of this code, and you'll be able to try all of this on your own as well after. Yeah, that's better. That's better. Well, you will have to manage by looking at just this top bit. Maybe, yeah, if I do this. Yeah, okay, cool. So what this is the build spec file. It's in the YAML format, and it can be in JSON as well. And basically what this is saying is that you, in the install phase, so there are 2 phases, and it's saying that well, you want to run it on Java 8. Don't use Java 8, use Java 17. And if you're on Java 8, migrate to Java 17. And basically the command that it's saying is run Maven install. And the output of that Maven install is this WAR file. And it also says package the app spec file and the scripts. And the app spec file, if you remember, it can be a YAML or a JSON file, and it contains the instructions on how you want to deploy your application. And and why you want to specify it as an artifact is because this is how you pass on between stages in your code pipeline. So you want to specify your app spec file as well, because you've checked it out now. You want to pass it on to the next phase, so you specify it in your artifacts. And then this is how, using the reports section, is how you would export your report. So let's say you were using Jacopo for code coverage as well. You could use, you could specify Jacopo here. So I'm not using Jacopo in my project. I haven't set up the plugin. So if you were using it, you could use Jacopo to even report on your code coverage, and then make decisions based on your Jacopo code coverage. I'll quickly show you the app spec file. So this is the app spec file where it's saying that it copies these files from where they are to where they are. So basically it's just saying copy these files from this place to this place. And then at each stage, so basically if you want the application to stop, this is the script you have to run, which is in the stop application location here, which gets copied as well. We did include it in the artifacts earlier. And then before installation, you want to install the dependencies for this particular application. And when you start the application, you write the code deploy config, and then you say call start application. Now, we quickly see what each of those scripts look like. For example, the stop application is just stopping Tomcat, and start application is starting Tomcat after doing some sort of configuration. But it's very customizable, and you can make those changes as you will, and it's just a matter of specifying this file when you create the steps in the pipeline. So you just say that this is the file. And you can also create override files by putting them in S3 and specifying that location that you would like to use. So let's go check the status of this pipeline. And you can see that the build has completed and it's in the verified phase and it's waiting for approval. So Richard, do you approve? Oh, right, you can check my code, but that is already there. That's a good point. Ooh, I like the attention to detail. And this was the one where you can see it doesn't have any recommendations. The recommendations are 0. So do you approve now?
Guru says yes.
Okay, Guru says yes. Okay, so cool. So I'm just going to do an approve. And that will trigger a deploy, which, if we go into the details, you will see that it's in progress, and that's going to be. So what I did do is, because with all this ChatGPT noise, I did try to get Code Whisperer working, which I wasn't very successful with because it is still in preview. Code Whisperer is AWS is offering to enable you to write better code and intelligently and faster. So you just have to put a comment in your code, and that should be able to recommend the code that you need, so fulfill that requirement. So I did try it yesterday and it worked. But this morning when I tried it during my dry run, it did not work. So we'll try it and we'll see, and then we'll go into the Kahoot quiz. Do we have time? Are we okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. Oh, that is called. So this is it's very easy to use. It has recommendations, auto prompts, which is like great. So what I'm going to do is just call this, and this was an example on the website. So hopefully, I'm supposed to just wait. It's not. It doesn't work. So I'm sorry. It worked yesterday, but that was worth a try. But it would write the code and say return A plus B. It was just worth a try. But the remaining part of my demo, the demo was pretty cool and nice to me. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a bit. Yes?
What is the name of the tool that writes the code? Is it called Whisperer?
Yes. And yeah, so I'm just going to unshare my screen till I just set up the Kahoot quiz. But if you could all go to kahoot.it while I just set that up, that would be great. And if you had any questions while I set it up as well.
Why that method is private?
Oh, I just was writing it for fun. Ooh. Okay, I shall make it public. Maybe it will work if I make it public, do you think? Do you think Code Whisperer likes? No, it doesn't. Sorry, but no, it was just me with writing private. Yeah. Out of habit. You only write private.
I had a question.
Yes.
It was regarding cloud code guru. So what does it actually check? So SonarQube checks like SQL injection, all that stuff. So what does code guru check?
So like it does check your styling and give you recommendations based on your styling. But it's quite an exhaustive list. I can't mention and remember all of them. But there is quite a long list of things that it does make recommendations on. Yeah.
Right. Can you modify it? Can you?
I'm not actually sure. I'm actually not sure.
Maybe like a bunch of rules that you use for your own.
Yeah. I hope you can, but I'm not sure. I can check and let you know. So, yeah.
About CodeGuru, like the best thing I like about it is that you can get most of the things you get from CodeGuru from say SonarQube or something else, and some AI thing. But then what it does best is it suggests you about the AWS APIs you're using. Because if you think about it, CodeGuru is AWS, and who else than CodeGuru or AWS themselves to know about AWS APIs? So if you are using, say, for lame example, like you are using S3 API within your code, and you are using outdated version or you are using not the best practice, CodeGuru will tell you about it. So that's the best use case I have.
Yeah. And it doesn't look like it has a configuration to add stuff. I think it's just based on best practices and the stuff that's already built in the machine learning and AI that it knows. Yeah, so great question.
No.
Because you asked me a question, I didn't answer that question.
So you won't ask further questions?
Yeah, exactly, right. Okay, cool. Yeah, so if you guys can go to Kahoot IT, that.
Oh, okay.
You will need to screen up because.
Yeah, I will do that,
Okay.
but after I do I just sit now and start.
Yes, but
But when I put that in, will I
Yes,
not have to
that's right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What's the team mode? Classic mode?
That's new actually. So I'm not sure.
Does anyone know in Kahoot should I choose a classic mode or a team mode? I've never done that
This way
before.
classic.
Classic?
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. You can take chocolate.
Maybe have some.
Yeah, it's better to get back on the screen now.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks, Jyothi, and thanks, everyone. I know, it's again after like this is. Yeah, so there's the pin. So when you go to Kahoot.it, you can enter that pin. And thank you for being so understanding and nice to me, everyone. Oh, when I click start, what will happen?
I think it's okay because it'll show the questions and it won't show the answers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Oh, and I forgot to give the Oh, there's a DevOps guru in the house. Who is that? I hope I did justice. Alright, cool. Is everyone in? Is the Wi-Fi keeping up? Yeah? Start? Alright guys, we're starting. And now? It's reading. Takes a long time. Okay, so Matt said, which of the following does CICD stand for? Surely not continuous release.
Oh, you need the music.
Oh, I don't have music.
I guess like three.
I select two.
All right. Continuous iteration. Sorry, that was a trick one. Next. Ron. Hope I pronounced that right. Yes, I promise you pronounced it right. Ooh, look at you. So, which of the following are valid code pipeline deploy actions? I rushed through this one, so. Ronald's nodding his head. Quite a few of you got it right, so you were listening, and I wasn't talking too fast, I take it, or maybe it was on the slide, and so it's okay. Who's in the lead? Ronald, look at you, and you were shaking your head.
I wasn't confident, there was a book.
That's what they all say.
Yep, so the abstract file can be in either JSON or YAML format. Alright. Oh, two people, ouch.
Sure, that's good. Actually,
Ronald's still in the lead. Looks pretty steady. I think Steve has also been in the second spot for a while. Next one. How many stages must a code pipeline have at the end? Ooh, three. Pretty much. Okay, Ronald, Steve, and Ethan. Is anyone trying to give this guy? Is Claudio going to give them? Yeah. Well, that was fast. I should have made this like 5 seconds. What?
Yes?
No one's listening.
No one was listening to me. Oh, you cry now. You go home and cry. Oh, the chocolates aren't working either. Alright, this one is going to be some tricky one as well. Is Ronald still going to be in the lead? Yeah, look at you. Someone was listening, or maybe someone has already used all of this. Yes, it's over 40 programming language. Ooh, Celeste, is that you? Yeah? Did I not frame the question correctly? Okay. Vipul, who's Vipul? Okay, this one. Yes. And Ronald, so on the spot. Good. then that would be awesome. And give me, and there's also the link here too. You can type the link out and give me feedback, that would be awesome. And I saw I opened it up. Okay? I hope that's all right. I haven't been here.